I'm Rebecca Silvestri, and this is Local Leaders, an interview series with local leaders telling us their best leadership insights and us getting to know what they're doing in the community. Today, we're with Jay Veal. He is the founder and CEO of Inc. Education and Black Tutors of Social Media, which is a nonprofit that he's just created. Hi, Jay. Good morning.
Hey, how's it going? Glad to have me on today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're excited to speak to you. So, Jay, I'm really interested to find out a little bit more about Inc. Education. I know it used to be Inc. Tutoring, and you've done a lot recently, and you've developed into something new.
Absolutely. So it's not complicated education or Inc. Education, formerly known as Inc. Tutoring, was basically in the grand scheme of things, it was a tutoring organization that tailored tutoring services to students from first grade all the way up to the doctorate level in STEM subjects, test preps, English reading, writing, and foreign languages. When I initially began the organization, I was in the education space teaching. But just to give those that are listening a little bit of a background about myself, my original background was in IT and tech. And then in the midst of all that, I went into the education space roughly around 2008. And I taught high school math for 4.5 years at that point, right? So I did from Algebra 1 all the way to AP Calculus in the classroom, and then covered literally the whole gamut, right, in different school districts within the DFW area. Once I got done with that, I became an instructional coach. So I taught teachers for about three years, and I became a district level administrator as well over 7 schools within DeSoto district in partnership with the Department of Education in DC. So once I got done with that, became an adjunct professor at a university for mathematics as well for another 4 years. So in the midst of all of that, I noticed there was a gap for what students of color were not getting inside the classroom for support and what they weren't getting outside the classroom. And that's when Inc. Tutoring was born at the time. I started knocking door to door by myself, very grassroots, bootstrap, no venture capital, just kind of making things happen at the time. And then, of course, as long as the story kind of unfolded, we grew by leaps and bounds within a couple of years. So after about 4 years or so, and we're in our 5th year now currently. So we have 89 tutors dispersed between 5 cities. So Dallas, Fort Worth, Chicago, DC, Austin, and Atlanta. We are now I guess you could say, the winningest tutoring organization or education organization with 11 awards to our name for our approach and what we do in education and tutoring. And we are also the #1 African-American owned tutoring organization in the Southern United States at this point. So now we migrated over to an education company versus a tutoring company because we started to get requests for a lot of different services that the public wanted, right? So outside of just tutoring alone, we also do academic coaching, academic counseling, we do mentoring, we do ghostwriting services now, believe it or not, for those that want to be authors, so they want to go get their books published. We do that. We do resume reviews, literature reviews for those who are becoming doctors and physicians who need those kind of services as well. We do writing services. So it's a lot of different things that are recommended to us now, to where we had to change our name to an educational entity versus a tutoring entity. And of course, now people are asking for homeschool type of services. So we wanted to pivot for a second during this pandemic and change our name to a kind of a different lane, which is now educational services at this point. So that's kind of why we decided to move from a tutoring organization to an educational entity.
That's really interesting. So, Jay, last week we were talking to Ralph Harper, and he wrote a book, and he talks a lot about how education is one of the factors that's really going to make a difference in inequality, especially with African Americans, because I think he quoted that there's a much higher percentage of African Americans who are illiterate. How is what? Yeah. I'll send you the video link, but it's very interesting.
I know him.
Oh, you do know Ralph?
Yep. Yes, absolutely.
So I'm interested. How is what you're doing different, and how do you feel that you're making a real difference in the lives of young people?
Yeah, so one thing that we offer and do in our organization is we start off our relationships with our students and our parents by getting to know them from a deep relationship perspective, right? One thing that I kind of harp on in the organization, and when I talked about it in my TED Talk, I discussed the fact that we have to have deep relationships with our students of color, regardless of where they're coming from. So they understand that we really care about them as a person first and where they're going and what they're doing, right? Once that's done, we include different stakeholders in our process. So when we're looking at parents, teachers, counselors, students, coaches, everybody's really on one page academically. So everybody understands how that operates, and then we mentor the kids and provide back and support, and really being in a real microcosm of a community structure to where these kids can get the backing that they need, the parents can get the information and the structure and the backing that they need, and everybody feels comfortable at a point in time. So where the kids can succeed and the parents can kind of focus on what they need to do, right? Which is work, and or if they're at home, cooking or whatever the case may be, they can really focus on what they need to do for the household, and we can do what we need to do on the educational side to make sure that those students are taken care of. When it comes to the literacy side of the house, of course, we do cover that. We do cover English, we do cover literacy, we do cover reading in our organization as well. So being the fact that you can't do mathematics or anything STEM related unless you have mastered some sort of literacy and you can read, right? One thing, if you go backwards, back to the 400 years, right, pre-slavery, right, where it was that we weren't able to read and write at that time, right? Now, moving forward, we want to get our kids to learn to read and write efficiently so they can then go and do other type of contents and other type of subjects efficiently when they get out there to the real world.
Right? And how does mindset play into success, especially within this the African American community that has suffered in the past?
So I think right now we have to look at a couple things. One is what we weren't able to do back then, opposed to what we're able to do at this day and age, right? With everything going on with the George Floyd scenario and the protesting and things of that nature, we have to keep in mind that what we're able to now do and what our students are able to now do, we have to give them those bits and pieces of information so they can take those things and run with them, right? So it's not necessarily at this time about, hey, we can educate the kids on what happened back then and what we weren't able to do, but now it's like, okay, cool, we can take the information that we presently have, we can take our processes that we currently have and utilize those things for the greater good, right? So now it's about, okay, how do we become entrepreneurs? How do we take the knowledge that we have and do something creative with it, right? How do we make impact in the community and in the community, right? The community with that, right? With that information, how do we ensure that we make better decisions for our young generation, right? How do we make sure that we encourage them to be better than we once were in the last generation, and how can we take those things and make the movement better, right?
Right.
So what it's about now.
That's fascinating. So, I mean, obviously, we all agree, or at least a lot of people agree, that inequality, especially in the Black community, does continue, and we've seen that a lot recently. And I know during this time, and I believe it's as a result, you founded a nonprofit. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes, yes. So during during this pandemic, there's been a lot of different requests from families of color, from students of color, from educators of color, saying, "Hey, we've seen Ink Education right around, but are there any Black-owned tutoring companies that are nationwide or global?" And a lot of the times, even in traveling in the past couple of years, the answer to that question has always been no. We don't know where the Black-owned tutoring companies are that are private tutoring companies, right? We see the Sylvans, the Kumans, Mathnasiums, we see the centers, we see different entities, but we don't know where we can get our students service who look like us, who talk like us, who walk like us, and who learn like us. We don't know where they're at. So
Yeah.
I took it upon myself to create a new organization, nonprofit called Black Tutors of Social Media. And in the grand scheme of things, on the front end of that, it's really about finding or having a space, which we started out on Instagram, which is at Black Tutor, the social media. A website is being developed right now. It'll be completed in August or the first or second week of August currently. And then a mobile app will come after that with some geolocation type of offerings as well to find the different entities. But it's one to create a space to where Black-owned tutoring companies that are privately owned, they are entities. They're not doing it as a hobby, but they do have an EIN and their actual businesses. People can find them in one place, either through the website, through the app, right, or through social media. For one, they are going to be vetted out as great organizations. So meaning that when we take them in, when the website launches and their releases, the organizations have been, we've looked at results, we've looked at impact, we've looked at data, right? All these different things we've looked at to ensure that they are one of the top organizations in that particular space of tutoring. So being able to have our families rely on us, on BTSM, to really have a place where they can come to for resources, for resources for the kids, resources for the educators, resources for the parents and families, and the other tutors, is really a great thing in that space. Now, on the flip side of that, which I call the back end, right? We want to offer other types of services as well. Oftentimes, kids don't get a chance to travel, right? So outside of their general area, right? They've stayed in Dallas all their life, New York, Atlanta, or LA all their life. They haven't gotten out. So we want to offer those kind of services at some point, right? We also want to offer mentoring services from a personal mentoring perspective to a career mentoring perspective, right? We want to offer college tours so those kids are able to go out and experience what different colleges look like on a private level and on the public level, right? We also want to offer, complimentary and free tutoring services as well that are donated through different entities, right? Could be other organizations, other companies, celebrities, leaders, all those kind of things, right? So people coming together to donate to a pot, right? A pot of funding. So individuals and students and families who would not be able to otherwise afford tutoring services are able to now come in and be able to have top tier tutoring services from top organizations within the Black Tutors of social media, who can then push forward and succeed where they want to go. So it's a lot of different things coming into play with BTSM.
Right. Okay, so just to recap, Black Tutors of Social Media, BTSM, that's bringing together Black tutors as a communal resource, but it's also a place where students and parents and families can go to see where they can get tutoring services. And at some point, you're also going to be gathering in the opportunity to maybe offer some of these services for free to those who cannot afford it themselves.
Correct. And then there'll be other different types of resources and services as well, including, on top of that as well. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So how can people connect with that?
Yeah, so on Instagram, you can come and follow at Black Tutors of Social Media. On Twitter, it's Black Tutors of Social Media, or actually it's Black Tutors of SM. So it is cut short a little bit there because that was how the name needed to be done. The website will be blacktutorsofsocialmedia.com when it goes live in early August. The headquarters, of course, for Black Tutors of Social Media and for Inc. Education will still be vetted here in the DFW area. However, we are going to have a second location pretty much in the Atlanta area. So Atlanta will become our second headquarters at this point when it comes, when the fall comes. So as we continue to operate, nationwide and globally, those two areas will be kind of our hubs where we operate off of on both of those particular dynamics.
That's really incredible. Congratulations. You've really gone from having a great idea to making something happen and then just keep growing.
Right. And it was quick, right? I woke up and I was like, you know what? Something needs to be done. A solution needs to be created. Nobody else is doing it at this moment. We are already, Inc. Education was already a very trusted organization and company. And at this point, for us to come out of here and spearhead the Black Tutors of Social Media organization off of that was just something that needed to be done at this time. So our families nationwide can really feel at home And just for everybody out there, this is not just something that we are creating just for minorities. Anybody can come and get services and get help. It just so happens to be that because of where we're at right now with the pandemic and the situation with protests and things of that nature, that we had to create something for and by people of color, but everybody can benefit from it by all means. Absolutely.
Right. That's wonderful. Well, we're just about at time to wrap up. Do you have any? Well, let me ask you this. What piece
Yeah.
of advice do you have for a budding entrepreneur that has an idea, such as you
Mhm.
did, but
Yeah.
hasn't acted on that idea yet? What are the next steps to get going?
Yeah, so for a budding entrepreneur out there, especially like during this time where everything is kind of crazy and people are thinking about new things to do business and new ways to do business, right? It's about finding what exactly the public needs. What is the public need? What is the public need in terms of what you're looking to bring out to the forefront? So really understand what is it that everybody wants and needs. From that point forward, you have to create a solution from that. Can a vetted solution be done with that? Can somebody come to the table and say, this has never been done before? Can somebody come to the table and say we can really make a major impact from that, right? If the answer to those questions is yes, then more than likely you have a viable business that can be created or that can be done, that can make revenue, and or something that can be donated to, right? So it's really about finding the want and the need. Is there a place for it? Can you solve a problem? If you can't solve a problem and nobody wants that problem solved, it's not a business. If you can solve a problem with it and people are looking for solutions to that problem, that is when you know that is a business that can be ran. And when you do that, you have to think about the marketing that can come from that, and also the final solutions that that need to be done from that. So that's the best advice that I would say to start off a business that you will be looking for. And of course, like I
Right?
said, with what we're doing, people have different ways to impact and different ways to donate back to the social media. As we unfold in August, those things will come then.
Well, thank you, Jay. Honestly, I think that was one of the best pieces of business advice I've heard. So a lot of times people I find think about what can I do, not what do people need.
Mm.
And that's where a lot of businesses fail because you're bringing to market something that you want to do. Doesn't, but what matters is what does the market need,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I learned that on do different accelerators and programs. It's always about what is it that the market needs, and if you can solve that problem and fill that void, then you're golden.
That's awesome. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us this week. Remember to check out Black Tutors of Social Media, and you can also check out Inc. Education. Thanks for joining us, Jay. And we'll see everyone next week. We'll be here with Fern Johnson of PepsiCo next week at 11:30 on Tuesday. Bye-bye.